and I've been on the team here at Neighborhood for about 17 years, and I have the privilege of leading our new nonprofit called Neighborhood Degree. And about 500 of you volunteer every year in the Houston School neighborhood with families to partner with them, to mentor kids from kindergarten all the way up through college and career and support whole families so that together we can end generational poverty in our community. And a couple weeks ago, we started construction on our new community center that's next to Houston School. It's very exciting. Dirt is moving, things are happening. And when it opens early next summer, it will mark 20 years of partnership with the Houston School neighborhood, which is amazing. I mean, the kids that were babies when we started are now the ones that are earning college degrees and moving out of poverty, all because one of you mentored them. You were their soccer coach. You helped their parents buy toys at the Christmas store. You helped them fill out their college applications. And their trajectory in life is changed. And their families' lives are changed. And their future children, their future grandchildren's lives, future generations in Visalia will have greater opportunities because of what God has done through our church in the last 20 years. It is amazing. And I feel so privileged to have a front row seat to all of it. And I tell you all of that because one, it is really, really exciting. And also because we are in this series called The 7 Deadly Sins. And every week we are talking about a different one and how it can distract us from or distort our relationship with God. And the sin that we're talking about this morning is greed. We're talking about greed. And when I think of everything that our church has done in our community over the last 20 years, I don't think about greed. From painting over graffiti to investing $3 million in a community center. None of that is greedy. That is, in fact, wildly generous. And every month we do these 4 Visalia projects, like this month, partnering with Salt and Light to bring water bottles to give out to people that are unhoused. At every opportunity, you all show up to be generous. And it blows my mind. And so when I was assigned this teaching on greed, and I thought about our church, I thought, actually we're doing pretty good. This is not something that we really struggle with. For sure, individual people might, but as a whole, we're doing pretty good. We could probably check this one off the list. And I think that's how most of us think of ourselves as well. It's easy to look at people that have way more than we do and to look at them and say, yes, they are greedy, they are hoarding more than they need. And then we look at ourselves and all the ways that we've been generous and we think, I'm not really doing that bad. I'm doing okay. See, I think when we think about greed, most of us think of like a little kid that's hoarding all the toys and yelling, mine! Or Scrooge McDuck swimming in a pile of gold coins. Or that 1% with their private planes and private yachts, and none of that really sounds like us. But what if the things that trip us up in life don't actually look like sin? What if the things that have the potential to derail our lives don't start out looking evil? What if they're more sneaky than that? See, what makes the 7 deadly sins so deadly is that they are sneaky. They quietly pull us away from the life that God intends for us. And they start out looking really good, and they offer really good things, like security and success and satisfaction. And then they end up leaving us feeling isolated and overwhelmed and stuck. Have you ever felt isolated, overwhelmed, or stuck? You might not intentionally be sinning, but what if something has crept its way into your life and is holding you back? See, the early church in about the 3rd century came up with the list of 7 deadly sins. And they did that because they started noticing there are these patterns of behaviors that we all fall into. And they trap us and they lead us away from the life that God has for us. They started noticing these aren't just outward behaviors, that they go deep. And they wanted to know what the roots are so that they could address the root causes of these inward struggles. And then they developed these practices, these things they could teach people to do that would replace those negative behaviors that hurt us with positive behaviors that help us. See, the early church created the list of the 7 deadly sins not to shame people, but to help us identify our struggles and provide a pathway out of them. See, the 7 deadly sins are not the sins that the worst people struggle with. They are the sins that all of us struggle with, that we all struggle with all of them. And sure, they might look different in different people, and you may struggle with some more than others, but we all struggle with all of them. And we all need Jesus to help us get out of their web. So this morning, we're going to dive in to greed. Well, back when I was in college, I got the opportunity to do a semester in Europe. And I got to travel with a couple of professors and a group of students through 12 different countries in 4 months. And we got to study art and religion and history, and it was amazing. It was my first time ever out of the country, and it was an incredible experience to learn about the world and culture and religion. But before we left, our professors told us that we could only take 1 suitcase, and it had to be less than 50 pounds. And I thought, how am I going to fit everything I need for 4 months in 1 suitcase? And so I packed that thing full. Like, I thought the zippers were going to pop off. And we showed up at the airport, and they weighed it, and it was a little over 50 pounds. So I had to take some things out and leave it behind. And I was so afraid that I didn't have what I was going to need for the next 4 months. See, greed doesn't always look like greed. Sometimes it looks like an overpacked suitcase or an overpacked life. See, greed doesn't have to look like swimming in a pool of gold coins. It's sneakier than that. See, greed is less about how much you have and more about how tightly you hold it. Because you can be rich and be greedy. You can also be poor and be greedy. You can be rich and be generous. And you can be poor and be generous. Greed is less about how much you have and more about how tightly you hold it. See, on the outside, greed can actually look not like greed at all. Greed can actually look like responsibility and planning ahead, packing well, providing for yourself, providing for your family. I mean, greed actually sounds more like this. Greed says, I earned it. I'm just being smart. I'm just being responsible. I would love to give more, but it's not safe right now. I'll give more when I can. See, greed doesn't sound like greed. I mean, all of that sounds more like virtue than vice. And what is so wrong with being smart and responsible and safe? Nothing. Nothing. Those are all really good things. But while we're being smart and responsible and safe, greed can sneak in and start to whisper, are you really being safe enough? Are you really being responsible enough? Are you really being smart? I think you might need a little bit more. In fact, you're not. You don't have enough. You don't have enough to protect yourself. You don't have enough to take care of the ones you love. You don't have enough time. You don't have enough energy. You just don't have enough to take care of yourself and the ones that you love. See, at the root of greed, the root is in fact not selfishness. The root of greed is actually fear. At its core, greed says, I'm afraid that I won't have enough. And when we're afraid that we don't have enough, we try to get more. I mean, greed tells us you don't have enough money in your bank account, you need a little bit more. You don't have enough time to get everything done. You don't have enough energy to care about everything and everyone. You don't have enough to be okay. And when we feel like we don't have enough, that fear often leads us to try and control everything. We try to control everything. We try to buy our way out of that fear. We try to buy everything we could possibly need to be safe and protected. We try to schedule our way out of that fear. We try to seize every opportunity and every moment and every minute so that we don't miss out on setting ourselves up for future success. And so we run harder and we run faster. I mean, greed actually can look more like FOMO. We just need a little bit more. We want to do it all and have it all, seize every moment, every opportunity. And then we end up overworking and overscheduling. We overschedule our kids because we don't want them to miss out. We overdo it because we want this good life. And I want a good life. I want to be a good friend. I want to be a good parent. I want to be a good child. I want to have a good house and a good job and a good vacation. And I want to care about people and I want to do it all. Greed is simply, I want it all. And I find myself falling into this trap over and over because I want this ideal life, this good life, all of these good things. I want it all. And so I run harder and I run faster because I'm convinced if I just do a little bit more, then life will get easier and better. And I tell myself, this is just a season. It's just a busy season. And then that busy season turns into a busy year, and a year becomes a decade, and a decade becomes a life. And I end up overcommitted and overwhelmed and overtired. And I didn't think that this was greed, because it doesn't directly have to do with money. But this is where greed is sneaky. Here I can get so caught up in doing all of the right things and thinking I'm doing all the right things and not even realize that I'm trying to do it on my own and not need anyone else and not even need God. See, greed whispers to us, you can't rely on God. You can only rely on yourself. So you better be smart. You better work hard. You better get a little bit more and save a little bit more and have a little bit more, and you better do it all because that is the only way that you and the ones that you love will be okay. And we get caught up in this cycle of needing just a little bit more and a little bit more and more control and more afraid that we're just never going to have enough. And we get caught up in this spiral over and over again. Because greed whispers, you can't rely on God. You have to do it yourself. See, I think for some people, it's easy to trust God to take care of them. That must be nice, because that is not me. It is really hard for me to trust God with my life because my mind goes to all of the what ifs. Like, what if? What if I trust God and things don't turn out the way that I want? What if I trust God's plan for my life and it leads to pain and suffering? What if I do trust God and it doesn't work out and I regret not planning ahead? What if God doesn't show up for me? What's going to happen then? And I find myself getting caught up in this cycle of endless worries and plan Bs and plan Cs and backups because I'm afraid to trust God with my life. Or even more so, to trust God with the people I love. And I'm guessing I'm not the only one. In fact, I think this is actually a normal human behavior because God talks a lot about it throughout the Bible. And then every story, the theme is basically the same. Over and over, in every story, God is telling people, trust me. Trust me. Over and over. See, I think he knew that this was going to be hard for us. It was going to be hard for us to trust. And so over and over, he talks about it. And there's this tension in us that if we want to follow God, we want to follow Jesus, and there's still this tension between greed, which is really fear, that says we have to fight for control and control everything. And this other side of Jesus saying, trust me, let it go. Trust me that I can take care of you. But greed tells us when you give up control, when you stop, when you let go, that's when bad things happen. When you let your guard down, that's when you won't have enough. And if you had a little bit more, then you wouldn't need to worry. See, greed tells us we just need a little bit more. And that little bit more turns into more and more and more, and it never lets us rest. I don't think that's the life that God has for us. Because Jesus said things like this. He said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." See, Jesus offers us this light life, this unburdened life, not a heavy 50-pound suitcase that we have to drag around, but light, like a carry-on backpack. So how do we get that kind of life? How is that possible? How do we fight that tendency to control and to greed and fear and all of those things that fight inside of us? How do we trust and let go? See, the early followers of Jesus figured out that this is not easy. It is not easy to trust an invisible God. This is not easy, and it's not automatic. That it takes practice. And so they developed these practices to help themselves practice trust. And they taught other people to practice these things because they found that when they did them, it led to a life that was more free, more peaceful, and more joyful. See, greed and control promise us all those things. They just never give it to us. So this morning, I just want to dismantle some of the lies that greed whispers to us with the words of Jesus and what he told his followers. And then I want to give us just some concrete practices, things we can do to actually live into those truths. All right? Okay, so lie number 1. Greed says you don't have enough, and if you had more, life would be secure. But Jesus tells us, I am more than enough for you. Remember all I have given you. See, greed tells us that what you have is just not enough. There's not enough hours in the day. There's not enough money in your bank account. There's one more thing. If you just did this one more thing, then you would be happy and at peace. But Jesus, in response, told his followers this story about a rich man that had a huge harvest. And the rich man says to himself, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns, I'll build bigger ones, and there I will store up my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you finally have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. But then God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you, and then who will get what you've prepared for yourself? This is how it will be for whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God. See, Jesus is using this metaphor to say, you can spend your whole life trying to get enough to be okay. And you could miss your whole life. And everything that you earned, is that going to keep you from the things that you really fear? Pain and loss and grief and death. That's why Jesus tells him, you fool. Lovingly, you fool. Everything that you've earned, what's going to come of that? You worked so hard, and you don't even get to enjoy it, and you missed out on this life that I was offering you. See, I think it's really easy for us to fall into that trap as well without even realizing it. That we can worry so much about not having enough that we run ourselves into the ground trying to get more. And we miss out on actually appreciating and enjoying everything that we've been given. Because greed tells us you don't have enough, you just need more. But Jesus says, I'm more than enough for you. Remember all that you've already been given. And the practice the early church came up with to fight against this feeling of not having enough is actually to make a list of everything you have. They made a list of every way that God has shown up for them today and in the past. They made a gratitude list. Instead of listing all the things that they don't have, they listed everything that they do have, every way that God shows up for them, from the sun to their breath to everything. So that when that fear started creeping up in them that I don't have enough time, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough energy to do all the things, they could counteract that fear with a gratitude list of every way that God has shown up for them today. Everything that he has done for them in the past to remind themselves that our security is not found in stuff and having more stuff. That our true security is found in who goes with us, not what we have. See, greed tells you you don't have enough. But gratitude tells you, look at how much I've been given. Lie number 2. Greed says you can't trust anyone to take care of you. You have to take care of yourself. But Jesus says you can trust your Father who loves you. Jesus told his followers this: don't worry. Don't worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body and what you will wear. For life is more than food, the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, and yet God feeds them. How much more valuable you are than birds. Your Father knows what you need. He knows you need these things. Seek his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. And Peter, one of Jesus' closest friends, told the early Christians, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. That he is a good Father. He loves you. Jesus is inviting us to give up control of our lives. Stop trying to control your life because you can't anyway. Stop worrying. Instead, ask your Father for what you need. Seek me and let me worry about all the rest. Instead of trying to take control and take care of yourself, Jesus taught his followers this very simple prayer. It's called the Lord's Prayer. And it goes like this: Father, hallowed or holy is your name. Your kingdom come. Give us each day our daily bread. Forgive us our sins as we also forgive those who sin against us. And lead us not into temptation. Jesus taught his followers, just pray for what you need today. Just enough. Instead of trying to do it all and have it all, just pray for what you need today. Stop trying to take care of yourself as if you're in this alone. You can trust me, that I'm in it with you. Ask your Father for what you need and stop worrying about it. And just stop worrying about it is a lot easier said than done. But thankfully, God gave us a much better practice than just stop it. The practice that Jesus gave us, that God gave us, was Sabbath. It's one of the 10 commandments, and it's a full day of rest. A day where we do no work, where we don't shop, we don't actually do anything, we just rest. And we trust that enough is enough. We don't try to max out our lives. We don't max out our schedules and our money and our energy and our everything in life. We purposely set limits on ourselves, a whole day where we do nothing. And we trust that God's going to fill in the gaps. And we let ourselves rest. And even though this is one of the 10 commandments, very few people actually live by it. I mean, most of us can't even imagine a whole day with no work. And yet, how many of us are exhausted and tired and worn out? Because greed tells us you have to go, go, go. You cannot stop. Because if you do, then that's when you won't have enough and you'll regret it. You have to do more. But Sabbath teaches us it's okay to rest. It's okay to stop. It's okay to trust that God's going to fill in the gaps. That God's working even when we're not. Pray. Ask your Father for what you need. And rest. That we don't need to take care of ourselves as if we are in this alone. That we can trust that God is in it with us because he's promised that he's never going to leave us, that he's always going to love us, and that he goes with us wherever we go. But what if that's too good to be true? It's so easy for that fear to creep right back in and say, well, what if you do rest and it turns out you don't have enough? What if something goes wrong? I mean, what if God doesn't meet our needs in the future and we regret it? Like, what if nobody helps me? What am I going to do then? Well, back to that semester in Europe, I packed this suitcase full of everything I possibly thought I could need to take care of myself for 4 months. But there was so much that was out of my control, including a lost suitcase at baggage claim. We showed up on day 1, and there was a suitcase missing. And it wasn't actually mine, it was a friend of mine's, but for 3 days, she had nothing. I mean, all of her careful packing, and it didn't matter. She had to rely on the rest of us in the group for everything. She had to borrow clothes, so she's wearing mismatched clothes, shoes that don't fit. Thankfully, somebody had an extra toothbrush. But it was very humbling and horribly inconvenient, but she got through it. And in fact, it turned out to be this bonding experience with new friends, and she had the opportunity to see the best sides of people come out. It's not what she wanted. Mismatched clothes aren't great, but it was okay. She had just enough. See, I think it's a lot easier to say, trust God, and then go, but what if? What if that happens? What if our worst fears come true? And when that happens, a lost suitcase might not sound like an answer to prayer. But I can assure you, this happened to multiple people throughout our trip. And every time, God showed up for them. When it happened to me, I was praying because I was like, this is the one time that everybody's like, nope. It didn't happen. Every time people showed up. And for me, that was an answer to prayer. Because sometimes, when what if happens, God answering your prayers is going to look a lot like other people. That your Father who loves you can and will show up for you. And sometimes it'll look like other people. Lastly, lie number 3. Greed tells us if you give something away, you won't have enough. There won't be enough left over. But Jesus in response says, give generously, and you will have more than enough. There was a rich man that came to Jesus and asked Jesus, what do I do? How do I follow God? And Jesus' response to him was this, sell your possessions, give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come and follow me. And when the young man heard this, he went away sad because he had great wealth. And Jesus said to his disciples, the people standing around, he said, truly I tell you, it's hard for someone who's rich to enter the kingdom of heaven. Again, I tell you, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God. Jesus is using hyperbole to make his point. Because the man went away sad, not because he didn't love God. He did. He wanted to follow God. But because he was afraid of letting go. What if? See, greed convinces us that if you give generously, there will not be enough left over. If you give your time, your money, your energy, your care, compassion, resources, there won't be enough. And I can't give away an hour of my time. I don't have room in my schedule for that. I can't give away that amount of money. I need to save it for my future. I can't care about what's happening in that part of the world. I don't have enough energy to care about what's happening in my world. See, greed is actually really easy to justify. But it's still greed. It's still fear. It's still control. And please hear me. Saving for retirement is a good thing. Not burning out is a good thing. Limits are really, really good. But only if they allow us to do the one thing that Jesus said is the most important thing. To love God and to love our neighbors well. So the hard question is, do our limits, the things that we say no to, do they help us do that one thing? Do our limits on our schedules and our money, the things that we say no to, do they help us love our neighbors and love God well? Or do our limits protect ourselves? See, when our limits just protect us, we're still caught in that cycle of greed. And Jesus invites us to let go of that, to let go of whatever we're clinging to, because God doesn't need it, but we need to be free of the fear of losing it, free of the fear of what if there's not enough. See, Jesus invites us in response to that wanting to control, that wanting to hold tight to everything we have, instead, to give some of that away, to let go of it. Because when we do, when we give a little bit of time, a little bit of money, give something away, it forces us to have to trust that God's going to come through for us. It forces us and makes some room in our lives for Jesus to give us something. When there's no room, when we're holding tightly to everything, there's no room for Jesus to give us anything, even if it's better than what we have. See, the one thing that I didn't pack in the suitcase that I ended up needing was actually empty space. I had no space for souvenirs and treasures that we found along the way. We went to amazing places. And I started wanting to bring some of that home, Christmas presents for family and friends and souvenirs to remember all of these things, and I had no space. So I started ditching clothes and shoes and different things along the way, and I figured out I needed a lot less than I thought. And I wanted space for more valuable things. See, all the clothes and all the things that I took on that trip, I don't have anymore. But I still have this hand-carved music box from Russia. I have a Christmas ornament from Venice. I have an art book from the Vatican. I have a rock from every country that we went to. And I have friendships that have lasted these 20 years with people that I deeply love and I rely on when I need something. See, what I found along the way was way more valuable than everything that I had packed. See, when we give generously, when we ditch some of that stuff, we do it not because we have to, but because we need more space in order for Jesus to give us things that are way more valuable. Things like purpose and meaning and love and connection and hope. You can't buy that stuff with money. But when you give some of yourself or what you have away, you get all that stuff for free. You can't use money to buy happiness. We've all heard that. But you can use money to bring a lot of happiness into the world for somebody else. And when you do that, it brings so much happiness into your world as well. And the math doesn't make sense. Nevertheless, it still works. You might be thinking, yeah, that sounds great. I wish I could give more. I wish I could volunteer more. I just can't right now. I don't have any margin in my life to do it. And the truth is, you're probably right. It's probably true about all of us. Because as Americans, we are taught to maximize everything, that more is the way to better, that more is the way to happiness. So we overschedule, we overcommit, we overmax our credit cards and our lives into everything, that we don't have margin to give some away. And I think that's where Jesus, as our good Father, lovingly smiles and shakes his head. You fool, more is not the way to better. You're going to go down that road and figure it out eventually, but it's a dead end. Get rid of some of that. It is just weighing you down. Let go. Trust me. So that I can give you more of what you deeply crave. That there is more joy. There is something I want to give you. But I'm not going to give it to you as one more thing you have to carry around. That's going to weigh you down. It's too much. Make some space. See, I work with a lot of volunteers, a lot of you. And every time you volunteer to mentor a kid or to help out in some way, I think, how do you have time to do this? I mean, you all have jobs or families or lives, things that you have to do. How do you make time to volunteer? And I figured out there's actually two different types of volunteers. There's the volunteers that have created space. They've literally said no to other things in order to say yes to this. They've made space in their lives. And there's other volunteers that want to do it just as well, but they want it all. So they add it in as one more thing that they get to do or that they have to do or that they should do. And by the end of the semester, it's really apparent which one they are. Because those that have created space and margin in their lives, they love it. It is joyful. They get to watch that kid graduate from high school and go off to college, and there's so much joy and meaning. They get to be a soccer coach and get to know those kids and those relationships, and they end up with so much more. It is so fun. And then there's the other volunteers that have just added in as one more thing. And then they can't follow through. They have too much going on. They can't commit, and then they end up letting somebody down. Or they end up burning out and exhausted by the end. And it's a really sad thing to watch. Because what started out as a really good desire, they both really wanted to do this. They wanted to do this good thing, and at the end, it ends up they hurt themselves, they let somebody down. And Jesus said it's more blessed to give than receive, which is true. There's a lot of blessing in it. But when you're giving more than you actually have, then it becomes a burden, not a blessing. It's too much. At first, we have to create some margin. We have to create some limits on our schedule, on our energy, on our money, on our time, in order to create space so that Jesus can give us something more valuable. And this is actually really hard for me to do. I want to say yes to everything. And over the last couple of years, I've done this a lot. I've just told people, yeah, it's just a busy season. I mean, we're launching a nonprofit. I have babies at home. I'm not sleeping. I just have nothing extra to give. I am maxed out. But a couple of years have gone by, and our kids are a little bit older. I'm sleeping more through the night. I have a little bit more margin, and yet I'm just as busy. But somehow I filled all of that margin with other things. See, I think if we're not careful, a busy season can turn into a habit. And those habits don't change even when our seasons do. We end up just as overcommitted as we were before. But the reverse is also true. That if you can make margin in a busy season, you can do it in any season. Like the habits that help you survive a busy season are the habits that are going to help you the rest of your life. In fact, the best time to create margin is in the middle of a busy season. And I tell you this, not as somebody that is living this out and doing this well. This is my struggle. As I was writing this talk, I was like, man, I have a hard time doing this, of setting those limits, and yet I know this is true because I've experienced the negative side effects of that downward spiral. I meet with a spiritual director, and if you've never heard of spiritual direction, it's kind of like therapy, but it's different, but there's some overlap. And every time when we meet, she asks me how I'm doing. And I start telling her all the things that I'm doing, and then she says, "You sound tired." And I always am. And then she asks me, "Is this the life, the light, unburdened life that Jesus offers you?" Nope. And then she asks me, "Where do you need Jesus to show up for you? What do you need to trust him with so that you can rest?" And maybe that's your question today. Where do you need Jesus to show up for you? What do you need to trust him with so you can stop living in fear and taking control? Instead, rest. Even give a little bit away, so that you can trust him with that. See, greed tells us there's not enough. You need more. You have to take care of yourself, and if you don't, nobody else will. But Jesus says, you can trust me. Trust me to carry that load. Lighten your load. Take less than you think you need. Give even some more away, because I have an abundant life I'm waiting to give you. See, after that semester in Europe in college, every time I travel, I only bring a carry-on. Doesn't matter how long I'm going. I've just discovered I can go more places and do more things if I can just take a small carry-on instead of lugging around a survival kit that weighs 50 pounds. And I always leave a little space in my bag to bring something home that's more valuable than whatever I had. Because creating that space opens us up to let trust grow. And when we do that, then we're even more grateful when God shows up for us. And then we can rest knowing that he's going to be there. And then it's easier to give a little bit more away because we've seen this happen over and over. That this cycle keeps going and gets us out of that trap of greed. See, greed says the only way to survive is by getting more and holding tightly to what you have. But greed is this closed fist. But generosity, this way of Jesus, is this open hand. And when your hands are open, then you can actually receive new things from Jesus. To receive those things that you actually deeply crave. That hope, joy, peace, rest, love. And that's the life that Jesus is waiting to give us. We can lay down our heavy loads and trust him with the rest. Would you pray with me? God, thank you that you are a good father, that we're not in this alone, that you walk with us every step of the way, and that you have valuable and meaningful and amazing things to offer us. That you love us, that you're going to take care of us, that we're not alone, and that you're going to use us in other people's lives to do the same thing, to help them learn to trust that you love them, and that when we give stuff away, you make it worth so much more. God, would you help us to be people that trust you this week? And in Jesus' name, amen.